The Kyoto Protocol is not a new movie starring Matt Damon. No, the Kyoto Protocol is something much more important than the movie. The Kyoto Protocol deals with how our planet is being affected by greenhouse gases, specifically carbon dioxide, commonly referred to as CO2. In a recent report by the United States Congressional Budget Office dated September 2009, global climate change poses one of the nation's most significant long-term policy challenges. Human activities are producing increasingly large quantities of greenhouse gases, especially CO2. A strong consensus has developed in the expert community that if allowed to continue unabated, the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will have extensive, highly uncertain, but serious and costly impacts on regional climates throughout the world. My goal here today is to provide you with enough information so that you can understand greenhouse gases and how they affect the planet, some goals of the Kyoto Protocol, and finally the results of the future and other climate agreements. So what actually is the Kyoto Protocol? According to former Vice President Al Gore in his book, An Inconvenient Truth, published in 2006, Gore says, "I helped achieve a breakthrough at the negotiations in Kyoto, Japan, where the world drafted a groundbreaking treaty whose goal is to control global warming pollution." As stated in the actual 20-page protocol, and also on the United Nations website, the Kyoto Protocol is an international agreement linked to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The major feature of the Kyoto Protocol is that it sets binding targets for 37 continents and the European community for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. To get a better grasp of the Kyoto Protocol, let's first start by taking a look at greenhouse gases and how they affect the planet. Greenhouse gases emissions, also referred to as GHGs, are responsible for creating harm to the environment by raising the Earth's temperature or surface temperature, which cause droughts, flooding, and typhoons, and many other different types of heat-filled catastrophes. This heating up is caused by sunlight that strikes the Earth's surface. However, some of that light is radiated back into the atmosphere. The greenhouse gases trap that heat, which is good. It actually keeps our planet nice and warm. To give you an analogy, think of our little blue planet spinning out there in space, and it's very cold out in space, so it needs a little bit of warmth. Just like as if you were laying on the couch last night, it was like 48 degrees, if you remember, and you grab a blanket and you pull it to get more comfortable, or maybe you grab your boyfriend and girlfriend and squeeze them real tight and just snuggle up with them. Our planet needs that type of warmth also to stay comfortable. The greenhouse gas acts as a cover. However, if too much greenhouse gases build up, what happens is just like when your car's sitting out in the hot sun. When you get into that car after a couple of hours, you roll the window down and you let those gases escape, or you turn the AC on. We don't have a hatch in the atmosphere where you can just open it up and let the gases escape. We're actually stuck with that heat in our atmosphere, and that's what's causing all the problems that we're starting to see with Hurricane Katrina and even the typhoons that we witnessed last week. So this brings us to our next point. What are the goals of the Kyoto Protocol? World leaders, convinced by scientific research, decided it was time to get together and come up with some sort of solution to these problems. According to congressional testimony given by U.S. Senator John Kerry, climate change will be increasingly central to our foreign policy and national security. We need transformation in public policy thinking to embrace the reality of what science is telling us, accept its implications, and then act in accordance with the full scope and urgency of the problem. In addition to what Senator Kerry said, an article in the March 2008 issue of Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist states this fact: the protocol requires industrialized country signatories to demonstrate progress towards a 5% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions over 1990 levels by 2005 to meet those targets by 2012. Huh? What the heck? Let me restate in non-atomic scientist terms. What we do is we start with what we have today as our level of greenhouse gas emissions. We look back in 1990 and what the level was then. We subtract 5% from that level. By 2005, we need to prove that we were headed towards that direction. By 2012, our goal is to actually reach that 5% level. The red arrow here represents the United States. The ones that are pointing to the right are increases since 1990. You can see Turkey is 95% increase over its level of 1990. The United States is 14.4% over. And then some other countries have done a really great job, like Germany's at a negative 18.2%. Latvia there at the bottom is 56% below its 1990 level. Now that we know what greenhouse gases are, and we also know what the goals of the protocol were, what challenges did the Kyoto Protocol endure? Consider that the Energy Information Administration states in 2004 the United States produced about 22% of the world's global greenhouse emissions. That's one country to 22%. That's due to the fact that we primarily have the largest economy in the world, and 85% of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels, which are similar to gas in your car, or the coal we burn in our coal plants to produce cheap electricity. Although President Obama has made cutting U.S. greenhouse gases a priority, however, as stated in a Newsweek article dated September 23, 2009, only Senate ratification of a treaty can do that. And on that scorecard, we seem to be back in 1997, with a skeptical Congress unlikely to go for a treaty that requires the U.S. to commit to carbon cuts that basically benefit the rest of the world. Since you have all been kind enough to listen to my presentation, I'd like to recap for you what we have discussed here today. You now have knowledge of what greenhouse gases are and how they affect the planet, some goals of the Kyoto Protocol, challenges the Kyoto Protocol had to endure. On a final note, as 2012 approaches and the Kyoto Protocol's time runs out, though it did not completely achieve the goals set by its champions, all of us are much more aware of the huge problem with global warming. Not a day passes that we do not have something in the news in this regard. Also, the Kyoto Protocol has paved the way for future climate agreements. By the way, one is approaching 62 days away, and that's going to be taking place in Copenhagen, Denmark. Maybe we'll get Matt Damon to start on the Copenhagen Protocol.